Manusia zaman dulu dan sekarang kebutuhannya berubah. Dengan jaringan baru 4.5G aksis yang terfiberisasi, kamu bebas berubah jadi apa yang kamu mau. Terus berubah, kenapa enggak?
Mungkinkah streaming konser metal? Mungkin dong. Dan bagian DPTCA. Jangan lupa aktivasi dulu.
Buat kamu mencari yang terbaik, fashion, gadget, sport, hobi, temukan semua di Bibi. Gratis ongkir, 100% orisinil, pengiriman cepat. Karena kamu nomor 1.
Manusia zaman dulu dan sekarang kebutuhannya berubah. Dengan jaringan baru 4.5G aksis yang terfiberisasi, kamu bebas berubah jadi apa yang kamu mau. Terus berubah, kenapa enggak?
What I think we need to bring the same philosophy of how people manage the sponsorship of a football team to esports. I don't have doubt that maybe 50 years from now, esports will be comparable to football today, right? So I think there are many things from when companies establish an engagement with Football Club Barcelona, with Manchester United, the type of things that you can do together, all those learnings you can bring also into the e-sport, right?
The international esports reach is said to be around 446 million today, according to research by Greenman Gaming, and the projected revenue is around 1.1 billion US dollar. It is said to be larger than the traditional sports league like NBA, NFL, So, and even the esports athlete is now growing numbers. It used to be only around 5,000 people. Now it's grown to around 28,000 esports athletes that, brands can work together as sponsorships, as influencer marketing and whatnot. So the more and more esports, which used to be only like a subset of entertainment, more and more is becoming the mainstream of entertainment. And everybody is looking at it. Global investors, media, brands, it's all watching the trend really carefully. And not only that the business itself is growing, what is more important is global audience. The audience reach is said going to be around 660 million by 2023. So for brands, there's no way to neglect esports anymore. It's not something that people can look at it and just think it's just a trend that you could say, okay, it might be not for us, but it's becoming one of the mainstream media nowadays. So today's topic, we're going to discuss. We have a few panelists, brands who in Indonesia is already leading the game, so-called, in the esports and riding the wave. And so we're going to talk with them and see what they have done and the experience about it. As a telco operator, obviously, right? People will think esports gaming, is very natural for you to be in that industry, to be in that part of esports. And in fact, you've been starting it, if I'm not mistaken, from 2018 in Indonesia, being a sponsor. And the latest move that you did with Axis was sponsoring EFOS, which is one of the top tier esports team in Indonesia, right? So could you walk through us, how the early decisions of going into esports for you in Indonesia and how has it been so far? What has the experience been so far for you?
Thank you, Anthony. So, indeed, it's already been a while that I would say not only esports but in general entire gaming industry. It's pivotal to our strategy, right? So in Axis, our target segment is youth, right? And we don't see a better way to cater to youth today than to play a strong role in gaming and esports, right? For us, playing a big role in this industry, because it's an entire industry, goes beyond trying to be just a sponsor. We need to try to do things that go beyond, right? We need to work together with the teams. We need to make sure that the brand represents the values of gaming and esports, right? And we also need to deliver from a proposition and product perspective, right? So I think in Axis, the whole team together, not only from a communications perspective, we think together, how can we get closer to gamers, closer to esports? Probably the main objective of doing that in the short term is to become more relevant to youth. In the long term, the objective could even be beyond that.
Thank you, Alfons. Do you think back to that aspect once you started, like you say, not only sponsorship, but then you work together with the team so that it is more cohesive. So has it been a good experience? Like, have you seen any kind of like direct impact into the brand itself, or even to the product itself? Has there any been significant? I know you have some obviously product offerings that tailored specific to the gamers or to the esports, but in terms of working together with team, that is interesting because having tie up with a team, especially an esports team for a year period, then obviously not only money, like you said. What kind of activities are you looking more going to happen later?
Yeah, so look, I think many people are still managing esports like if it's a different type of animal, in the sense that it's not the conventional show. What I think we need to bring the same philosophy of how people manage the sponsorship of a football team to esports. I don't have doubt that maybe 50 years from now, esports will be comparable to football today, right? So I think there are many things from when companies establish an engagement with Football Club Barcelona, with Manchester United, the type of things that you can do together, all those learnings you can bring also into the esports, right? So I think there is kind of restrictive thinking in general of how to manage esports. Like it's still a niche category, but I think we need to break those barriers and start bringing. At the end, this is a show. It's a big show. It's gonna get bigger every day. So I mean, from merchandise to take the players and do joint initiative with them. I think there are a multitude of things that we can do, and that at the end, it's not necessarily reinventing the wheel, but it's just treating esports with a different lens. It's treating esports like it's already one of the big shows, and either you play it now or you're gonna be late. And if you arrive late, if you try to become the sponsor of Football Club Barcelona today, it's almost impossible, right? So I think it's a philosophy thingy, right? How we look at esports, right?
Well, the data shows, right? The data that I just said earlier. I mean, the global reach of audience is almost 1 billion people. 600 something people in 2023. So you're right. I mean, it is huge. Arguably, if we kept poking on football fans, maybe they will say another word. But yeah, I see what you mean. But I like what you say by saying treating esports not only, again, a subset of industry, but it is there. It's a big show, like you said, it's big entertainment. So the decision came naturally early on in the group. I mean, it was not a hard decision. Just okay, we have to be in there. Remember that back then?
I think, look, the decision to be in mobile gaming was almost a given, right? We are a youth brand. We need to be part of mobile gaming, and then from there you move into you keep increasing the budget. But I think what was difficult was to make it a strategic choice, right? One thing is to say, look, we are going to be active in mobile gaming. We are going to spend some part of our budget on it. And we are going to participate, sponsoring some tournaments of esports as well. The other thing is when you say, look, this is going to be a strategic choice. Once you make it a strategic choice, it's something that as a brand is no longer an option. It's no longer a nice to have, it's a must have. So we really need to have big bets on it, right? And from there, I think working with a team like EVOS helps a lot. I think helps Axis and helps EVOS, right? Because the way we see this is not as a short-term partnership, right? When you do tournaments, typically you have the spikes of attention, right? But when you work together with a team for a long period of time, and for me, again, strategic is key because a long period of time requires it to be a strategic partnership with EVOS, not just working together with them for a certain event, then it allows us to have a longer span of time where we can collaborate in bigger things, right? This decision, I think, came as a consequence of making esports a strategic choice for Axis, right? Axis wants to be the best provider for people who like mobile gaming and people who like esports, right? And that's it's part of our vision, right? So from there, these decisions come more naturally.
how do you see as an e-commerce company you fit in the whole, esports ecosystem? Because usually esports ecosystem, then we talk about the team, about the, the sponsors, the viewers, and so Blibli itself, how do you see it fit into the whole ecosystem?
Yeah, it's interesting questions, and so I think a few years ago when we start seeing the trend, right, in the world, not just Indonesia, that more and more people, especially the young, tech-savvy millennials, start adopting and becoming a games player, right? I'm not talking about the sport part yet, just, playing casual game. And we look at the data, whether it's worldwide, Asia Pacific, or even Indonesia. Everything, all the data show into just one direction, growing, right? Now, as an e-commerce, where we also understand that we play and our business, our core business is mainly in Indonesia, where when we talk about demographically and the population, Indonesia is mainly young. We love playing games, and even the youngsters, they spend more and more times on gaming. So the questions for us becoming like, how can we also participate in this? How can we use this new affinity as one of the way for us to engage more of our customers, right? Because e-commerce, yeah, you're talking about transaction, you're talking about you're talking about commerce, but at the end of the day, it's the whole experience. So we think that this is something that we think it's a strategic for long term, and we try to enter into this, and our first initiative that time was to sponsor the Piala Presiden, right, back in 2019, and it turned out it was a great success. And of course, we look at also all the metrics, right? The number of customers, the numbers of engagement that we got, especially from the young users of our platform. And then we, as an e-commerce players, we also provide a lot of gaming equipments, game vouchers, any kind, right? And we see that that's something positive. That's why we continue with Piala Presiden in 2020. And then we also create a Blibli esport tournament, right? So yeah, I think this is just another piece of the puzzle for us as an e-commerce player on how we incorporate into the ecosystem.
Thank you. I mean, I'm interested to discuss a bit more about your Blibli tournament, right? Your last year. It was last year, if I'm not mistaken. I think you specifically, instead of aiming for the professional team, you actually work with the so-called amateur or students team. Am I correct?
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Can you explain the reasoning? Can you tell us why and how
so
did it go?
Like with any other sports, right? I think let me try to change the view first, right? Like any other sports, not everybody can become a sports player, right? I'm inspired to become a sport player, but I know my limitation, right? But it doesn't mean that I cannot be a fan of specific sport. Similarly with e-sport, right? There is no difference. Now it become a sport, right? While people in the past just playing game casually, some of them actually grow up and become a professional players. This is like a new career path, right? So for us as a local Indonesian e-commerce, we always in our mission that we want to make something better for this country as well, right? And we see that, hey, maybe there are a lot of talents in Indonesia. Maybe some of these talents, if we participate and we also aggressively helping them, maybe some of them might become professional players, and they can also make the country's name wonderful, right? If they can become a world-class esport player. And I think that's why we think that, okay, there are a lot of companies already put a sponsorship help for professional players. Why don't we, as a local players, we start from the ground up? We start from the non-professional and help them, nurturing them. Hopefully one day, some of them can make it to the world class.
Very interesting. So you mean that it's almost like if in basketball we have the NBA and NCAA kind of thing, a smaller league, right?
That is correct. Yeah, exactly.
And does it mean,
270 million people, man.
yeah, right.
Who knows, right?
Yeah, right. There's that not everybody can be that top, and we have to start somewhere. I like it, but does that mean that you will do that every year, kind of thing?
Yeah, of course. We monitor and we review, and we're trying to improve. What is the most effective way to reach out this aspiring professional players wannabe, right? And how we also incorporate a workshop, a mentoring, coaching.
Okay, you do have that as well.
Yes, sir. So it's not just a competition, but we also being supported by some of our partners. We're trying to create a master class, a workshop, right? So maybe one day, right?
Yeah, maybe. Okay.
This is a long-term, man. This is a long-term
Of course,
strategy,
of
long-term
course.
investment.
Well, that is actually very interesting, because then it means just like what Alfons said, right? Having a conscious decisions of making esports, not a one-off or tactical thing, but a strategic thing into the DNA of the company. Which you're talking about building ecosystem, so it's long-term, obviously, and you start from the get. Last question before I let you go. What about the pro team, though? Are you doing more things with the pro team?
On the pro team, yes, of course. We will continue to work with partners on trying to see what we can do with pro teams. Maybe right now or last few years is still in the sponsorship mode. But what can we do next? How can we improve this? Of course, it's still in the work, right? But that's something that we are quite open because again, this is part of our long-term strategy, and we have to create a balance, right, between like your analogy, right? The NBA players and the NCAA players, or maybe the varsity players, right? So we try to combine all three and try to bake it into a sustainable strategy for Blibli.
Okay. Insto is now quite recognizable in the gaming or esports industry. So it's a bit uncommon combination. Like I said, it's like pharmaceutical and game or esports. So can you tell us why? What happened and how come it the reasoning behind how come Combiphar or Insto is now more into the game?
Okay, it's interesting you asked this question, Anthony. But first of all, I'd like to thank you again, I think, for having me in this event. I know that probably Insto seems out of place, I think, in this esports ecosystems. I mean, especially amongst the telco operators, e-commerce, maybe electronic brands and other brands that are commonly associated with esports. However, I think when you look deeper, actually, Insto has a good and strategic fit, I think, to esports. So I think first of all, Insto has been a presence in Indonesia for more than 40 years, and I think has emerged as a #1 eyedrop brands. So I think we have like a lot big customer and I think consumer base. But I think we also need to make sure that we have a good influx, I think, of new users or new consumers. In this case, it's actually the youngsters. So we want to stay relevant and I think connect with the youngers. And I think we know that esports is one thing that is, I think, growing, and it's a relevant passion point, I think, to connect, I think, with the youth. The second part, I think, to that is Insto campaign, I think, for the last 5 years has been talking about Buka Mata, Buka Insto. So I think literally means, I think, open your eyes, open Insto. And I think the whole campaign, I think, has been, I think, trying to educate consumers on how to open their eyes about the importance of eyesight. And in the past, I think recent years, I think we've been focusing on educating consumers about dry ice, conditions, and esports, or in this case, creating this dry ice symptoms awareness. We see, I think, esports and I think gamers is one of the key target, I think, for us to talk about and educate about dry ice. And I think last but not least is all about, I think, in the brand DNA. So Insto is all about opening possibility. So when we talk about, open your eyes, we're trying, I think, to help, I think, consumers to open their eyes, open the world, and open the possibility. Like I think Kusumo mentioned just now, and I think Alfons touched about that as well. Esports really open the possibility for Indonesian youth. So not so many opportunity, I think, for us, I think, as a nation, to be able, I think, to perform in the world stage, and I think have the opportunity to become world champions. And esport is one of the venue, I think, for Indonesian youth, I think, to become someone, right? And I think we see, I think, this trend, and I think more and more people are into esports. So we like, I think, to take part in this, and that's why in the past, I think, few years, I think we have built esports component into our BTL activities. And I think recently, in fact, I think this year's we've been the official eyedrop for Piala Presiden Esports 2020, and we also the official eyedrop for Piala Menpora Esports 2020.
Piala Presiden Esports 2020. Insto selaku official eyedrop Piala Presiden Esports 2020.
Itulah dia dari semuanya yang sudah bekerja sama untuk mewujudkan hari ini ya. Terima kasih banget buat Insto, pejuang e-sport seperti kita semua, ya nggak?
Well, now that you put it that way, I guess it makes sense, right? I mean, you play game esports, your eyes will be tired, will be dry, and obviously, you need an eye drop, and Insto is gonna be there for you. But I really like the way that you, again, the resonance between, looking at it not only as an opportunity to widen, again, to reach the younger audience, but also the opportunity to actually help build the nations, like help build, maybe give opportunities, like you said, open your eyes, new opportunities to bring the athletes, Indonesian youngsters into the global stage. I think that is also very interesting to hear. I want to go back a bit though, like in the beginning, do you remember what was the first kind of like things that kind of like made the management or yourself kind of like, okay, it's time. It's time to do more in esports, like not only sponsorship, only just, I know it started from looking at trends, like just like what, I mean, for Axis, obviously, it's very clear because they have all the data, but for you, it's probably like, almost like it's something outside, right? You will look at the trend as a market trend, youngsters trend. So when did you and how did the management decided, all right, let's put budget into it, and then let's put more budget into it?
Right. We were looking, I think, like you mentioned, I think we look at the trend, I think, of the data, but of course, I think we also understand, I think, about our consumers, right? So I think when we look at the different segments of age groups, we are looking at the passion points, I think, where they are spending, I think, most of their times. And when we look at the media consumptions, digital is, I think, one of the big, I think, component, I think, in their media consumptions. But at the same time, we also understand, I think, the occasions. I think when we look at the brand, I think DNA, I think brand opportunity where we are able, I think, to educate about our consumers. I think we also look at the, gaming, I think, is one of the key, relevant occasions for us to get into that. We started, I think, to get into this, I think, in the past, at least, I think, 3 years. So I would say, I think we are still quite newbie, I think, in this world. I think compared to some of other, I think, companies and brands ahead of us. Yeah. So I think, but we believe, I think, we are making, I think, a progressions, I think, step by step. So I think, yeah.
I think I would like to ask you, Wei, whether do you still look at esports, niche or non-niche esports industry in Indonesia After 3 years doing it and doing more, do you still look at it as more like still a experiment, or it's already no longer experiment? It's already strategic as well, just like Axis and Blibli.
Yeah, I would say I think we are looking at more as a later one. I think it's part of our strategy. Obviously, I think we are still quite new here. I think 3 years, and we're still evaluating. I think where we are, and I think how effective I think esports in our strategy. However, I think looking at the trend, and I think we have about some data says 62 million I think gamers in Indonesia. And I think esports is here to stay. So I think maybe more on the fine tuning. I think on how we can be part of it, and I think take a role in the progress and I think development of esports. So yeah, I would say I think we are looking this more as a long-term strategy.
And there will be possibility where we might have a esports in-store as well. Product. Never say never. Eh?
Never say never. Yes.
Never say never.
We always open our eyes.
Thank you. So I wanted to ask specific about this year. Obviously, 2020 is a tough year, challenging year. Different with, but most of the time, most of it is challenging, right? How do you see the pandemic so far has affected this whole esports, activations? One, for example, obviously tournament cannot be held offline; it has to be all online, for example. So, and brand usually, we like offline because it's all about engagement with our customers. Teams likes offline because engagement, they are fans and everything. So, how do you see that dynamic work so far this year, probably?
So I think this is a very interesting topic, right? Because like in many aspects, the pandemic is making us adapt the way we do things. And then we realize that maybe some of the things that we are doing now in a different way, maybe could be better than what we were doing before, right? So, of course, we like to have some offline activation, and that's an area that for us in esports, it's always important. But through the pandemic, we doubled down in digital activation. And we have done much better than what we did last year in this field.
In terms of what? Much better in terms of what?
In terms of achieving engagement through digital activation, right? So, I mean, for a field like esports, is all this offline activation as needed as it seems? Because honestly, I mean, we were scared, right? We had a ton of initiatives planned for this year, many offline initiatives. We have been able to execute everything online and achieve better results than what we expected, right? So that's one of the benefits of esports. It fits very well with digital, right? And I think this does not only apply to esports. I think that in general, through the pandemic, we are realizing that yes, there are some things that we cannot do. But we are also discovering new ways of doing things. It's forcing us to become more digital. And I think in our case, in esports, yes, we have missed certain offline activation, but in general, this push from the pandemic that has forced us to go much stronger in terms of digital activation, in terms of how we engage with our esports audience digitally. And I think here, the previous discussions were deeply interesting, right? Esports is not only about the pros and the enthusiasts. You have a huge segment of people who watch esports and they are very casual, right? And how can you engage with them, right? And I think the pandemic is forcing us to drive a more digital engagement that works naturally well with this category, right? So we changed our way of working in many aspects. The events that we wanted to do, we needed to do digitally, not only for esports, but I think that in this category, there is a digital way of doing things that works well.
And how the pandemic going for you so far in this category, in esports category?
During this pandemic, we've seen a lot of growth in certain area of the categories, right? Of course, the health-related stuff, the groceries, all the primary items, they're all spiking. However, this pandemic also impact in the whole economy of the country, right? I'm talking specifically about Indonesia. Hence, we also seen some of the spending shift from the customers. So, sadly say, some of the hardware for gaming, those are not cheap, right? Those accessories, those gaming laptop,
I know.
definitely you require some serious investment, right, to purchase one. That also have a little bit of contraction. Now, when talking about esport itself, like you asked, we also revisit our strategy. But again, it's always a question that, is it just the offline event that we can do? No, right? There's always a way, right? And plus, because we started as an e-commerce, right? And it's an E. So we need to find a way on how to bring that offline event into online as well. So last September, for example, we set up a Blibli Community Cup with one of our partners, Revival TV. Basically, there's a small competitions on Mobile Legends, Valorant, and PUBG, and a couple others mobile games. It's not bad, I think it's about almost 1,500 participants to compete, right? I'm not talking about the viewers and everything. So with that, we think that, okay, I think this is something that we can continue on. So this coming December, we're gonna create another tournament, what we call a One Esport, which I mentioned a little bit before, where we're gonna create a master class, a workshop, and try to help these non-professional players to upgrade themselves and still compete in this tournament. And all of this will be done purely online through digital, right? Because if we think about it, right, the game itself, esport, it's right? People play with one another through digitally, right? So why the event only have to be offline, right? I think it can be both, right? So yeah, I think as a brand, as a business, we just have to be agile and try to find that there is always be a new way, right? As long as we can stay relevant.
Thank you. It's the year is kind of like we have to be creative, and it's kind of like make everything faster. Sometimes some things are on the pipeline, like this kind of thing. But then because of this year, everything is faster, and yes, you can kind of think mentality. Right?
We are grateful, Anthony, to be frank, because our core business is e-commerce, right? We're still grateful. I think we fare better than a lot of other businesses, right? That due to the pandemic got hit more, right? But at the same time, it also creates a different challenge. Yeah. For example, the fulfillment, the logistic with the the social distancing, the lockdown, and all those stuff. You just have to figure it out, right? On how to create a solution and yet still engage with all your customers.
And esports is definitely, because of the E, is one of the easy way to reach out, right? Because of that. What about Alfons? What is the budget now? Is it, since it's very strategic, why do you put the budget in?
Basically, at the end, when we look to our budget, so the esports budget is everywhere. It's not only in A&P, it's also in product, it's everywhere, right? So what we try to do with our budget is, for certain strategic initiatives, we know how much we want to spend, and then we distribute it in the different areas, right? From marcoms to product, and within marcoms, of course, we're going to have digital activation. We're going to have sponsors also, the different category as well. So I think it's a cross area, right? Like, let's take an example, no? If in Axis we were leading the esports strategy from a pure A&P, from a pure marketing communications discussion, we would have never decided to give free unlimited gaming data to everyone. And that has a budget also, which is probably bigger than the whole communications budget that we are spending, right? And this is also something that is about walking the talk, right? If we're making it part of our strategy, we need to try also to walk the talk, right? Hey, okay, we want to bring this association between Axis and esports, between Axis and gamers. We need to also go some steps beyond, right? And I think that's an interesting part in terms of the budget, I don't think it can belong to a certain function, right? It needs to be a bit cross-cutting. And I think the other interesting part about budgeting for esports or this type of areas is that when you do a business case for this, I think you need to believe on it. It's not only going to be direct ROI, I'm going to make money out of this. It's the best option from a perspective of short-term return on investment. Not necessarily. This is more like a venture you are gonna get in, and you to believe that this is the right vision for yourself. Why I think this is very important is because in esports and in mobile gaming, everyone is playing right now. Like many companies are playing on it. So you really need to be willing to double down on it, right? If not, maybe it's not the right thing to do. Huh?
I have a very interesting follow-up questions for that, but before we go there, I want to ask Kusumo first, budget-wise.
Yeah, when we first entering into this sector, right, the same question arises, right? Okay, whose budget is gonna be, right? So we look at it maybe from a different point of view, right? Because this encompass a few things, right? So we're trying to see it from the what we call integration of 3C strategy, right? The first C, which is community building, which usually we done it through event, activation and whatnot, right? And then the second part is on the content and communications. And the third part is on the commerce part, right? The transaction. So this esport actually touch all of three.
Chris cut, Alfons says.
Yeah, exactly. So at the end of the day, even though we decide which of the budget holder that will help managing this, but I would say that we create a new kind of budget for this.
Wow, you create a new budget category.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, because it touches a lot of this area, man.
Okay. So how do you kind of like measure success in that sense to the shareholder and manager? How do you kind of like say, all right, maybe not so much to shareholder or management, but maybe how do you as the management measure the success of this, investments or exposure in esports? What is the key performance or key success metrics for you then?
Quite a few. For us, we look at it on the user engagement index, and then how many new customers and users from this specific age group, right? And then, of course, because again, it's gotta be tied to our core business, we also look at after our participation and entering into this sector, how is it gonna help us also grow our main business, right? So we look at those three, whether it's new customers, the engagement index, as well as can this also bring business back to Blibli, right? In this case, into our gaming category, into our electronic categories and others.
I will imagine it will be not that different with Axis, Alfons.
Yeah, actually, I think we all follow probably the same type of measurements, right? I think what's important in order to measure success is also to have a definition of what do you want to achieve, what is success for you in this category, right? Because like we are seeing in this discussion, it's not always the same, right? For some companies, it makes sense to play in this category for certain reasons. For some other companies, it may be more tactical and it's still a good opportunity for them, right? In the case of Axis, in our case, basically, this is our vision, no? So our vision is we want to be the most preferred operator for gamers in Indonesia, right? So at the end, the measurement comes from there, right? So we need to have we measure a few things, but the net promoter score of gamers with Axis, we measure, of course, also brand perception. We do a brand health tracking every month to understand how is that evolving, right? And I think success ultimately is achieving your vision, no? And to measure progress, I think all those metrics are important, right? I think we have mentioned a few. For us, it's very important to see that brand association. When we look more into short term, we are going to evaluate for specific activities what is the end result in terms of, hey, is Axis being perceived better from gamers, right? So I think measurements may be similar for all of us, but maybe the ultimate objective is not necessarily the same, right?
Yes, interesting. And you're correct. I mean, depending on the brand and where you'll see the long term and combined even with a greater brand strategy, right? Because esports is one category, it's big and growing, but there's another category as well. Wei, you want to add anything into this discussion, maybe?
Yeah, I mean, same thing. I think engagement. I think we talk about the reach. I think of the campaign, and I think probably specific. I think to our campaign. I think we are also measuring our brand associations with the esports as well. And I think to the objective of trying, to connect and relate, with the younger audience. We also measuring the brand preference among the certain age group. As part of the measurement we are looking at. So some product attributes like the brand that understand me. Among the younger audiences, definitely something that we are looking into as well.
Manusia zaman dulu dan sekarang kebutuhannya berubah. Dengan jaringan baru 4.5G Axis yang terfiberisasi, kamu bebas berubah jadi apa yang kamu mau. Terus berubah, kenapa enggak?